Welcome back to Klepper's Corner. Today in history. The calendar says March 27th, which means humanity once again proves that whether we're ruling empires, exploring continents, inventing medicine, or accidentally crashing airplanes full of vacationers, we've always had a talent for making history dramatic, complicated, and occasionally extremely dumb. Today's stories feature monarchs dying under suspicious circumstances, treaties that promise peace for about as long as a gym membership in February, and scientific breakthroughs that accidentally save millions of lives right before the world decides to go to war anyway. Because nothing says human progress like solving one problem while immediately inventing 3 more. Let's take a look at the greatest hits of March 27th, the day history really leaned into the chaos. Segment 1. Power, betrayal, and extremely messy leadership transitions. History repeatedly reminds us that leadership transitions rarely happen calmly. They usually involve betrayal, suspicious medicine, or someone dramatically falling into a river while wearing too much jewelry. In 47 BC, Julius Caesar helped Cleopatra reclaim the Egyptian throne after defeating her brother Ptolemy XIII in a battle that doubled as both a geopolitical turning point and the ancient world's most dramatic family argument. Cleopatra's comeback tour wasn't just about power, it secured Rome access to Egypt's wealth, proving once again that global politics often boils down to who controls the grain supply. Fast forward to 1625, and King James I of England dies after receiving mysterious medical treatments from his favorite advisor, which sounds less like healthcare and more like an early episode of True Crime Royal Edition. The suspicious cordial he drank immediately made him worse, which is the medical equivalent of someone handing you herbal tea that tastes like ambition and treason. Meanwhile, in 1309, Pope Clement V excommunicated the Republic of Venice for grabbing territory that technically belonged to the Church, demonstrating that medieval diplomacy often involved threatening eternal damnation as a form of economic sanction. Today, we call that trade policy. Back then, they called it, God is very disappointed in your shipping practices. Segment 2, exploration, colonization, and the branding of entire continents. In 1513, Juan Ponce de Leon spotted the land that would become Florida, naming it after the Spanish Feast of Flowers, which sounds peaceful until you realize the next few centuries mostly involved conquest, colonization, and arguments about property taxes. Explorers often describe new lands as paradise, largely because they had not yet discovered the mosquitoes. The myth that Ponce de Leon was searching for the fountain of youth is a reminder that history tends to romanticize events that were actually driven by gold, land, and occasionally kidnapping. European exploration was essentially the original startup culture. High risk, high reward, and frequently catastrophic consequences for the people already living there. The discovery of Florida permanently altered global geopolitics, trade routes, and eventually spring break tourism, proving that one sighting on the horizon can reshape centuries of history. Also, naming a place Florida because of flowers is branding optimism at a level modern real estate developers can only dream of. Segment 3, peace treaties, revolutions, and the shortest calm before the storm. The Treaty of Amiens in 1802 briefly paused the non-stop warfare between Britain and France, creating a short window where Europe collectively agreed to stop attacking each other long enough to reload. The peace lasted about 14 months, which in historical terms is basically a long weekend. Meanwhile, in 1836, the Goliad massacre during the Texas Revolution demonstrated that harsh crackdowns often inspire the exact resistance they were meant to prevent. Santa Anna's decision to execute hundreds of prisoners unified the Texan rebellion, proving that nothing motivates a political movement quite like being extremely angry and extremely armed. These moments show how fragile peace can be when leaders treat diplomacy like a temporary inconvenience. Negotiations may pause conflicts, but unresolved tensions have a way of returning, louder, stronger, and with significantly worse consequences. Segment 4, sportsmanship, science, and humanity accidentally improving itself. In 1871, Scotland and England played the first international rugby match, which established a proud tradition of polite British people politely tackling each other in mud while calling it gentlemanly competition. Early rugby rules were so confusing that scoring a try didn't actually score points, which sounds suspiciously like modern performance reviews. Meanwhile, in 1914, Albert Huston discovered that sodium citrate could prevent blood from clotting outside the body, enabling stored transfusions and eventually modern blood banks. This discovery saved countless lives during World War I, demonstrating that even as humans invent new ways to injure each other, someone else is inventing better ways to keep people alive. Around the same time, Mary Mallon, better known as Typhoid Mary, was permanently quarantined because she unknowingly spread disease while feeling perfectly healthy. Her story introduced the world to the concept of asymptomatic carriers, which is both medically important and deeply unsettling when you realize how often people confidently insist they are fine while clearly not being fine. Segment 5. Disasters, aviation lessons, and the physics of human error. In 1964, the Great Alaska Earthquake shook the planet with a magnitude of 9.2, literally turning solid ground into liquid and proving that the Earth occasionally reminds humanity who actually owns the property. Entire neighborhoods slid into the ocean because the soil liquefied, which sounds like science fiction, but is actually geology's version of pulling the rug out from under civilization. In 1968, Yuri Gagarin, the first human in space, tragically died in a routine training flight, reminding us that even pioneers of extraordinary achievement are still vulnerable to ordinary risks. And in 1977, the Tenerife airport disaster became the deadliest aviation accident in history, when two Boeing 747s collided in heavy fog, leading to major reforms in pilot communication and cockpit teamwork. Modern aviation safety procedures exist largely because history occasionally teaches lessons the hard way, usually involving complicated machinery and very bad timing. In conclusion, March 27th reminds us that history rarely unfolds neatly. Empires rise through alliances and betrayals. Explorers rename continents with marketing optimism. Peace treaties barely outlast the ink used to sign them. And scientific breakthroughs often arrive just in time to help humanity survive its own mistakes. The past is not just a collection of events. It is a long-running series of plot twists, proving that humans are remarkably creative, occasionally brilliant, and frequently unbelievable. And if history teaches us anything, it is that progress usually happens when curiosity, ambition, and chaos collide at exactly the wrong time. Or exactly the right one.